I want to start today with what might be the ultimate paradox of our existence. It's a quote from the evolutionary biologist George Williams, and honestly, it's been stuck in my head all week while we were prepping for this deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
It just frames the entire problem we're looking at today so perfectly. He wrote, "It is indeed remarkable that after a seemingly miraculous feat of morphogenesis, a complex metazoan should be unable to perform the much simpler task of merely maintaining what is already formed."
It is a striking thought, isn't it? It really forces you to stop and just look at biology in the mirror.
Right.
We start as a single cell, a zygote. And through this incredibly complicated, high-stakes process of development, we build these massive structures.
Unbelievably complex.
We build brains that can contemplate the universe, hearts that pump tirelessly, immune systems that, they can identify millions of pathogens. We build the skyscraper from scratch.
And that's the hard part.
That is the hard part.
Exactly. That's the miracle. But simply keeping the machine running, repairing a bit of damage here and there, washing the windows, fixing the plumbing, that should be easy by comparison.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, we fail at it.
Inevitably.
Inevitably.
We do. And that failure is what we call death, or more specifically, senescence, leading to death.
So today, we are looking at the ultimate biological puzzle, death. And I don't mean in a gothic, grim reaper, memento mori sense.
No, not at all.
Why is it a biological necessity?
Yeah, or is it?
Because the deeper we got into this stack of research, the more I started questioning the inevitability of it all.
And that is exactly the right mindset to have. We're going to explore the what of death, how we even define it biologically, which it turns out to be a philosophical minefield.
I can imagine.
We'll look at the how, the cellular mechanics like telomeres and mitochondria that seem to act as these internal clocks. And perhaps the most importantly, where I think the biggest surprises are, we'll look at the why.
The evolutionary theories.
The evolutionary theories that explain why nature seems to have, designed us to fall apart.
We have a massive stack of research papers today. We're pulling from evolutionary frameworks published in PMC, detailed breakdowns of telomere biology, critiques of the free radical theory.
Which has totally changed.
Totally changed since I was in school, by the way.
Hmm?
And we've even got some philosophical definitions from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
And our mission really is to dismantle a very common assumption. I think most people have this vague idea that death is programmed into us for the good of the species. The circle of life idea.
Right, like I need to die to make room for my kids or to prevent overpopulation. It feels intuitive.
It does feel intuitive, and it's it's a comforting narrative, but as we're going to see, the reality is much colder, much more mechanical, and frankly, much more fascinating.
Let's start with the basics, though. Section 1. What is death, really? Because you'd think it's a binary switch. You're either on or you're off, alive or dead. But the literature suggests it's a lot messier.
It is incredibly messy. If we look at the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, they distinguish between the loss of life account and the concept of viability.
Okay.
The standard biological definition usually involves the loss of the capacity to engage in vital activities. So that means self-modification, integration of bodily functions, basically the business of being an organism.
So if you're doing the things that life does, metabolizing, moving, processing, you're alive. If you stop, you're dead. Seems simple enough.
That's the vitality argument, but then you run into exceptions that break that rule completely. The sources mention frozen embryos, for instance.
Or the tardigrade, the famous water bear.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Let's look at the tardigrade. It's a microscopic animal, and it's incredibly resilient. You can freeze them, or even more impressively, you can dehydrate them.
Just dry them out.
You can dry them out until they are essentially a speck of dust. If you looked at a dehydrated tardigrade under a microscope in that state, they are doing absolutely nothing. No metabolism, no respiration, no vital activities are happening.
So by that definition, it's dead.
By the strict vitality definition, yes, it's not alive. But it's not dead, is it?
No, because you can just add water.
You add water, and it comes back to life. It's not dead because it remains viable. It has the capacity to return to life if you create the right conditions. This state is called cryptobiosis.
Mm-hmm. So that's the key.
That's the key. Biological death isn't just a pause in the music, it's the smashing of the instrument. It is the irreversible loss of viability.
That distinction, viability versus vitality, is huge. It means life isn't an activity, it's a potential.
Exactly. And even in us, in humans, the line has shifted. For millennia, the definition of death was when the heart stopped. Simple.
Yeah.
Then we developed CPR and ventilators. And suddenly, a stopped heart wasn't an irreversible loss of viability anymore. It was just a pause. so the line had to move.
And now we look at the brainstem.
The brainstem criterion is the modern medical standard, yes. It's the irreversible cessation of the brainstem's function, which controls breathing and consciousness.
But even that feels fuzzy.
It is, because biologically, your cells don't all die the moment your brainstem goes dark. There's a lag. Fingernail cells, skin cells, they can continue to metabolize for hours or even days.
Wow.
Death is really a process, not a single moment in time. It's a dismantling of the colony piece by piece.
This brings us to the concept that really, it blew my mind when I was reading the background for this, biological immortality.
Right.
Because we tend to think of aging senescence as a universal law of physics, like entropy. Everything wears out. But that's not true for everything, is it?
No, it is not. And this is crucial to understand for everything else we're going to talk about. Aging is a feature of some life, not all life.
Okay, give me an example.
The classic example is the hydra. It's a small, freshwater relative of the jellyfish. If you look at a hydra, it doesn't seem to age. Its mortality rate doesn't increase with time.
Wait, let's unpack that. A human's mortality rate skyrockets. My chance of dying this year is way, way higher than it was when I was 10.
Exponentially higher. But for a hydra, a 100-year-old hydra, if you could keep it in a lab that long, is statistically just as likely to survive until tomorrow as a one-day-old hydra.
So it doesn't get frail. It doesn't get slower.
Nope, it doesn't senesce.
So it's not that they can't die. A fish could eat it.
Oh, they die all the time. Fish eat them. The water temperature changes, they get diseases, but they don't fall apart from the inside. They don't die of old age.
How? What is their secret? What's going on there?
It all comes down to stem cells. The hydra is essentially a bag of stem cells that are constantly renewing. It's constantly rebuilding itself from the ground up. If you cut it into pieces, the pieces regenerate into new, whole hydras.
So it's achieved what the sources call bio-indefinite mortality.
That's the term. It's not truly immortal, but its lifespan is indefinite.
And it's not just the hydra. The sources mention certain bacteria and yeast, right?
Yes, specifically those that divide symmetrically. If a bacterium splits into two absolutely identical daughter cells, they're both new. Neither one is the old, aging parent. In that lineage, the organism is essentially immortal.
It only dies if you kill it.
Exactly. Senescence, the gradual deterioration of function, is not happening there. It's a biological feature that some life forms have and some don't.
So if the hydra can do it and a bacterium can do it, why can't we? Why are we stuck with this expiration date? It feels like we got the short end of the evolutionary stick.
It does feel that way.
Yeah.
But to understand why, we have to stop looking at cells for a minute and start looking at math. This transitions us perfectly into section 2, the evolutionary why.
This is where we get into the selection shadow.
The selection shadow. It sounds like a sci-fi thriller title, doesn't it?
It really does.
But it describes a cold, hard, mathematical reality of natural selection. And to understand it, you have to remember what natural selection actually does. It selects for genes that help you survive and reproduce. That's it.
Survive and reproduce, the two main goals.
But the force of that selection isn't constant throughout your life. It's strongest when you're young and developing, and it weakens as you get older.
Okay, walk me through this. Why does it weaken?
Think about it this way. Imagine a population of animals in the wild. Let's say field mice. In the wild, mice almost never die of old age.
Right, something eats them.
Something eats them. They die of cold, owls, starvation, floods. This is what biologists call extrinsic mortality. The world is dangerous.
Got it.
Extremely. Now imagine a gene mutation appears in a mouse that kills it at age 2.
That's a young mouse.
Right. That mouse dies before it has many babies. So that death gene doesn't get passed on. Natural selection sees it, targets it, and weeds it out immediately. The spotlight of selection is bright.
But what if the gene kills it at age 4?
By age 4, a field mouse has had dozens of litters.
Yeah.
It has passed its genes on to hundreds of descendants. If a gene kills it at age 4, natural selection. It barely notices.
Because it already won.
It already won the evolutionary game. The spotlight has moved on. That mouse is now living in the shadow of selection.
So once you've passed on your genes, nature is essentially done with you.
Essentially, the classic example used in the literature is the salmon. A salmon is semiparous. It spawns once and then dies. Almost immediately. It literally rots while it's still alive after spawning.
Yeah, the zombie salmon. I've seen the videos. It's gruesome.
It is. Now imagine a mutation arises in a salmon that allows it to live for another year after it spawns.
Okay, so we have a super salmon. It survives the spawning run. It swims back to the ocean.
But does that give it an evolutionary advantage?
Well, I guess not if it can't spawn again.
Exactly. It has already reproduced. Unless that extra year of life allows it to reproduce again, which for salmon biologically is almost impossible due to the massive energy cost of the migration, that mutation doesn't get passed on with any higher frequency.
Nature doesn't care.
Nature doesn't care about the salmon after it spawns because its genetic legacy is already secured in the riverbed.
So we live in this shadow where selection stops watching us so closely. And this leads to three main theories the sources outlined. I want to go through these because they explain so much about our bodies.
They really form the foundation of modern aging theory.
The first one is mutation accumulation, proposed by Peter Medawar. I call this the trash can theory.
That's a great way to put it. Medawar suggested that bad mutations, genetic errors, are constantly popping up in the gene pool. If a mutation kills you at age 2, natural selection weeds it out immediately because you never reproduce.
Sure, that gene's a dead end.
But if a mutation gives you, say, Alzheimer's at age 80...
You've already had your kids, you've probably already become a grandparent. You passed that gene on decades ago.
Decades ago, natural selection couldn't see the bad effect because it happens so late, deep in the selection shadow. So, over thousands of generations, the human genome becomes a trash can for these late-acting deleterious mutations.
We just collect them.
We collect them. We fall apart in old age simply because there was no evolutionary pressure to stop those specific errors from accumulating.
That makes a chilling amount of sense. It's essentially neglect. It's like the landlord stops fixing the building because the tenants have already signed a new lease somewhere else.
That's a good analogy. But the second theory is even more cynical. It's not just neglect, it's an active trade-off. It's called antagonistic pleiotropy.
Okay, this sounds complicated, but I think it's the most important one.
It is arguably the most dominant theory today. This is George Williams's contribution from 1957. The name is a mouthful, but the concept is actually pretty simple.
Break it down for us.
Pleiotropy just means one gene has multiple effects. Antagonistic means those effects work against each other.
So one gene does something good and something bad. A double-edged sword.
Exactly. Specifically, it does something good early in life and something bad late in life.
Can you give me a concrete example of this? Because this feels like the smoking gun for why we age.
Okay, let's look at calcium metabolism. Suppose you have a gene mutation that ramps up how aggressively your body calcifies bone. In your 20s, this is fantastic.
Stronger bones.
Your bones heal fast, they're hard to break. If you're a hunter-gatherer running from a predator or fighting for a mate, strong bones are a huge advantage.
So you get high survival, high reproductive success, you win the game.
You win the game. But that same gene keeps running. It doesn't turn off. By the time you're 60, that aggressive calcification starts happening in your arteries.
Oh, hardening of the arteries.
Atherosclerosis, heart attacks. The very gene that made you robust at 20 is now actively killing you at 60.
So the gene that saves you at 20 kills you at 60, and natural selection takes that deal.
Every single time.
Every time.
Every single time. Because in the wild, you might not even make it to 60 anyway. You might get eaten by a predator or die of infection at 30. So a gene that gives you a 10% boost in fertility or survival at age 20 is worth a 100% chance of death at age 80.
The benefit is now, the cost is later.
And evolution is all about the now. We are programmed to prioritize youth at the expense of our future selves.
So we're basically driving a car where the engine is boosted with nitrous oxide. It goes incredibly fast at the start of the race, but the engine block melts by the 10th lap.
That is a perfect analogy. We are built for a sprint, not a marathon. And this connects directly to the third theory, the disposable soma theory by Kirkwood. This one focuses on energy economics.
The budget.
Yes. Think of the body like a business. An organism has a limited amount of energy coming in from food. You have a budget. You can spend that energy on two main departments: maintenance and repair, or reproduction.
And since the goal of evolution is reproduction,
you skimp on maintenance. It makes no sense to build a body, a soma, that lasts for 500 years if the statistical likelihood of you being eaten by a lion is 10% per year. You'd be over-engineered.
it would be a waste of energy.
A total waste of energy that could have been used to make more babies, which is the only thing that matters from a gene's perspective.
So the body does just enough repair to get you to reproductive age and keep you going for a bit, but it doesn't invest in perfect repair. It's like buying the cheap replacement part for your car, not the official one.
Exactly. The body's disposable, the genes are immortal. We are just the temporary vessels designed to carry the cargo, the genes, across the river. Once we reach the other side and offload the cargo, the vessel can sink.
That is a humbling thought. We're just the shipping containers.
We are, and this is why the old idea, which you might have heard, that we are programmed to die to make room for the next generation, is largely rejected by modern biologists.
Yeah, that's the good of the species argument. The whole circle of life thing. I need to die so my kids have space and resources.
Biologists call that group selection, and it's mathematically very weak. Think about it. If a cheater mutant appeared that didn't die and kept reproducing, it would have more offspring than the noble ones who died to make room.
The cheater's genes would spread.
The cheater's genes would spread like wildfire, and the programmed death genes would disappear. Evolution works mostly on the individual, not the group.
So it's not a program. We aren't designed to self-destruct like a Mission Impossible tape.
We just run out of warranty because nature stopped paying the repair bill.
However, there is one exception in the sources regarding that programmed death idea. I want to mention it because it's a fascinating counterpoint. A study using computer modeling.
Oh yes, the spatial competition model.
It suggested that in very specific spatial conditions, death might be advantageous.
Yes, this was from Physical Review Letters. The simulation showed that if organisms are limited in how far they can travel, so they're living right on top of their parents and grandparents, then a shorter lifespan actually did help the lineage.
Because if the parents don't die, they eat all the food and the kids starve.
Exactly. In that very specific, spatially constrained environment, the immortal individuals ended up surrounding themselves with their own offspring and competing with them for limited resources. This led to the extinction of their entire lineage.
So the ones that chose to die did better.
The lineages that chose to die effectively cleared the board for new, perhaps better adapted generations. But this is considered a minority view, or a special case. The dominant view is still neglect and trade-off.
Okay, so that's the why. Evolution traded our longevity for fertility. Now let's look at the how, the nuts and bolts, the mechanics. Because even if evolution doesn't program death, our cells certainly seem to have countdown clocks.
They absolutely do.
Let's talk about telomeres, section 3.
Telomeres are probably the most famous mechanism of aging. You see them mentioned in skin cream ads now. But to understand them, we have to look at how DNA replicates. It's a physical problem.
The end replication problem.
Right. Every time a cell divides, it has to copy all of its chromosomes. DNA is a double helix. When it copies, it unzips. An enzyme called DNA polymerase rides along the strand, building the new copy. But it has a design flaw.
What's the flaw?
It can only build in one direction. It's like a train that can only go forward.
Yeah.
On one of the strands, the leading strand, it just zooms along, no problem. But on the other, the lagging strand, it has to do a kind of back stitch. It jumps forward, stitches back, jumps forward, stitches back.
Okay, I'm with you.
But at the very, very end of the chromosome, there's no place for it to jump forward to start that final stitch.
So the last little bit of the DNA doesn't get copied.
It gets left off. Every single time the cell divides, you lose a tiny chunk of the end of your chromosome.
The sources use the shoelace analogy here, which I love.
It's the best one. Think of a chromosome like a shoelace. The telomere is the plastic aglet at the end that keeps the lace from fraying.
And every time the cell divides,
A tiny piece of that plastic tip gets snipped off.
and eventually you run out of plastic.
You run out of plastic, and when you run out, the shoelace starts to fray. In genetic terms, you start cutting into actual important functional DNA, and the cell cannot allow that.
This is the Hayflick limit.
That is the Hayflick limit. A normal human cell can divide about 50 times, give or take, before the telomeres get too short.
And then what happens? Does the cell just explode?
Not quite. It enters a state called senescence. It becomes a zombie cell.
A zombie cell.
It stops dividing, but it doesn't die. It just sits there, functioning poorly, and often secreting inflammatory chemicals that damage the cells around it. Or it undergoes apoptosis-programmed cell suicide. It takes itself out of the game.
Now, here is where the sources got really detailed, and this addresses a misconception I definitely had. I thought telomeres were just about length. Short equals bad, long equals good.
A lot of people think that.
But it's about the structure, too. I saw the term sheltering complex.
Yes. This is crucial. This is the newer science. Telomeres aren't just naked DNA dangling in the breeze. They are coated in a complex of proteins called shelterin. These proteins help the telomere loop back on itself, forming what's called a T-loop.
For T-loop.
Imagine tucking the plastic end of the shoelace back into the knot so it's hidden from view.
Why do they need to hide the end?
Because a loose, naked DNA end looks exactly like a double-strand break, a major catastrophic injury to the DNA. If the cell detects a loose end, it thinks the chromosome has been snapped in half. It triggers a massive alarm called the DNA damage response, or DDR.
So the T-loop hides the end so the cell doesn't panic.
Exactly. But as telomeres get short, they become too stiff or too short to physically form that loop. The end pops out, the cell sees it, screams damage, and shuts down division permanently. This is what triggers senescence.
But the sources mentioned something that was really surprising to me. Telomeres can cause aging without actually being short.
This is a newer finding, yeah. It's termed length-independent dysfunction. It turns out that oxidative stress damage from free radicals, which we'll get to, can mess up the telomere structure even if it's still long.
How?
It can damage the shell-turn proteins or the DNA sequence itself, causing the loop to unravel.
So you could have long telomeres, but if they're frayed or unraveled due to stress, the cell still thinks it's dying.
Precisely. This is huge because it helps explain why cells that don't divide, like neurons or heart muscle cells, still age. They aren't dividing, so their telomeres aren't getting shorter from replication, but they are under constant metabolic stress.
And that stress unravels their T-loops.
The alarm goes off and the cell malfunctions. It's not just a mitotic clock, it's also a stressometer.
That connects perfectly to lifestyle then. The sources link short or damaged telomeres to everything. Cardiovascular disease, diabetes, pulmonary fibrosis.
It's a vicious cycle. Telomere damage causes a cell to become senescent. Senescent cells secrete all these inflammatory factors. It's called the SAP, the senescence-associated secretory phenotype.
The zombie cells start causing trouble.
They do. This inflammation causes more oxidative stress in neighboring cells, which damages their telomeres. It's a cascade of failure that spreads through the tissue.
You mentioned oxidative stress, which leads us perfectly to Section 4, the free radical theory. Now, I feel like I've been hearing about free radicals and antioxidants since the 90s.
Oh yeah, it was the big thing.
And the narrative was so simple. Metabolism produces smoke, which are the free radicals. That smoke causes rust or damage.
Yeah.
Antioxidants clean up the rust, so eat your blueberries, live forever.
That was the mitochondrial free radical theory of aging, or MFRTA, from the 1950s. It was elegant, intuitive, and for decades, it was the accepted wisdom. But the sources suggest the story has changed completely.
How so? What broke the theory?
Well, when scientists really started testing this in a controlled way, the results were confusing. They gave animals massive doses of antioxidants to mop up all the free radicals.
And did they live forever?
No, in many cases they didn't live any longer at all. And here is the real kicker. In some experiments, specifically with C. elegans worms, increasing the free radicals actually made them live longer.
Wait, increasing the damage made them live longer. That's completely counterintuitive. How does that even work?
It is, until you realize that free radicals, or ROS, reactive oxygen species, aren't just toxins, they are signals. This is the new hypothesis that's taken over.
Signals for what?
For repair and adaptation. When a cell is stressed or lightly damaged, it releases a puff of ROS. That ROS acts like a smoke signal that tells the nucleus, hey, we have a problem down here in the mitochondria, send in the repair crew.
So it's a call to action.
It's a call to action. And if you take too many antioxidants, you're basically putting out the smoke signal before the fire department even sees it. You're dampening the body's own adaptive response.
Is this related to that idea of hormesis?
That is exactly hormesis. The idea that a little bit of stress makes you stronger because it triggers repair and defense pathways. Exercise is a great example. Exercise creates massive oxidative stress, but that stress is what signals the body to build stronger muscles and more efficient mitochondria.
So if you took a huge antioxidant pill right after a workout.
You might actually blunt some of the long-term benefits of that workout. You're silencing the signal.
Okay, but we still die. So clearly the signaling system fails eventually. What goes wrong?
The problem is the runaway signal. This ties back to the other theories. Remember mutation accumulation. As we get older, we accumulate random damage. Our cells get messier, less efficient.
Right, the trash can is getting full.
So the background level of damage starts to rise. The cells are constantly shouting for help. They are pumping out more and more ROS to signal for repair. But the repair mechanisms are getting weaker.
Because of the disposable soma theory.
Yeah.
We didn't budget for long-term perfect repairs.
Exactly. So the cell shouts louder. It produces more ROS to try and get attention from a repair system that's going deaf.
And
Eventually, the ROS levels get so high that they stop being just a signal and become toxic in their own right. They start causing the very damage they were meant to report. They damage the mitochondria, which then leak more faulty ROS.
It's a panic spiral. The system overloads and burns itself out.
It's a stress response that spirals out of control. So it's not simple wear and tear, it's a dysregulated signaling network. The cell essentially destroys itself, trying to save itself.
This is painting a picture of a machine that is, it's designed to fail, or at least designed without a long-term maintenance plan. But there's a huge anomaly in the room when we talk about this, and that's us, humans.
Humans are strange. We're the exception to a lot of rules.
We live a long time after reproduction. If evolution stops caring about us after we pass on our genes, we should die at 40 or 50. But we routinely live to 80 or 90. Why? What's the evolutionary advantage there?
This brings us to Section 5. It's a really beautiful idea, actually. It's called the grandmother hypothesis.
This is one of my favorite evolutionary theories because it just turns that old idea of the useless elderly completely on its head.
It really does. The hypothesis suggests that older females, and by extension, older community members in general, contribute to their own gene pool not by having more kids, but by ensuring the survival of their grandchildren.
And that makes so much sense when you think about how helpless human babies are.
Incredibly resource-intensive. A foal can walk within an hour of being born. A human baby can't even hold its own head up for months.
Right, they're useless for years.
Exactly. A young mother can only care for so many helpless infants at once. But a grandmother, she has a lifetime of knowledge, she has skills, and she isn't burdened by pregnancy herself.
She can forage, she can protect, she can teach.
She can do all of that, and in doing so, she dramatically increases the chances that her grandchildren survive to reproductive age themselves.
And from a genetic math perspective, that actually pays off.
It pays off big time. A grandchild carries 25% of the grandmother's genes. If a grandmother can ensure the survival of 4 grandchildren, that's genetically equivalent to having another child of her own, but without the massive physical risk of a late-life pregnancy.
So natural selection actually did select for longevity in humans, but only because that longevity served the younger generation.
Precisely. We are one of the few species with a distinct, long, post-reproductive life stage. Orcas, or killer whales, are another famous example. Postmenopausal female orcas are crucial for leading the pod to food, especially in times of scarcity.
So our usefulness to our genes doesn't end when we stop reproducing.
It ends when we stop being able to help our kin. That extended our warranty.
It's a nicer way to look at it than just the selection shadow. It shines a little light into that shadow.
A little light, yes, but the shadow is still there. We still face the wall of antagonistic pleiotropy, the very systems that make us robust enough to be active grandparents. Our high metabolism, our powerful immune responses eventually degrade into the diseases of aging.
So let's bring this all together. We've looked at the philosophy, the evolution, and the mechanics. It's a pretty complex picture.
It all connects. At the end of the day, we die because of a fundamental evolutionary trade-off. We are built by genes that prioritize their own immediate propagation over our long-term structural integrity.
That's antagonistic pleiotropy, the deal with the devil.
It is. And the mechanism for this trade-off is built right into our cells. We have telomeres that act as fuses to prevent runaway cancer in our youth. But that same fuse eventually shuts down regeneration in our old age.
And we have mitochondria that produce the energy for that youthful sprint, but they also generate the signals that eventually turn toxic and burn the engine out.
And we exist in an evolutionary framework where natural selection simply stops fixing the cracks in the foundation once the building is complete and occupied by the next generation.
It really changes how you think about curing death. You hear about these tech billionaires trying to solve death.
Yeah.
But if the problem is woven into the very architecture of our development, if the genes that kill us are the same ones that made us grow in the first place, you can't just switch them off.
No, you can't. You'd have to fundamentally redesign the organism from the ground up. If you turn off the mechanisms that cause aging, you might turn off the mechanisms that allow for complex life or, protect us against cancer.
That's the ultimate paradox.
It is. If you find a way to make telomeres lengthen indefinitely, you don't get immortality, you get cancer. If you stop the ROS signal completely, you might stop repair. It's all interconnected.
Which brings us right back to the Hydra at the very beginning. It's immortal, but it's a simple tube of jelly.
And that is the final provocative thought, isn't it? Is death the price of complexity? The Hydra has no brain to speak of, no complex organs. It can regenerate because it's simple. We are complex, dynamic, intelligent, and mortal.
So if you can edit out all those antagonistic pleiotropy genes, maybe we wouldn't become immortal. Maybe we just wouldn't develop into complex adults in the first place.
It's entirely possible. Perhaps that trade-off wasn't just for fertility, but for consciousness itself.
Well, on that note, we'll leave you to ponder your own complex mortal existence. Thanks for diving deep with us.
Until next time.